Evangelist, Armageddon. Edi ni jina homa.
Armageddon part 1. Na Armageddon no jina homa okun a ebetwa to na esi Yesu Kristo eni omonsam entem.
That's right.
Ntokwa nankasa ni. Na be sha ase free Yesu Kristo echidifo so. Eni omonsam anamosifo wasase so.
That's right.
Ehon na de ade ne sha ase free. Na be to aso a the grace of Kristo baba be fa yen efiri hade akosoro. Onwiye. Ye ba ko di soro mfinchi apem. Yakoba na Armageddon no afa ye didi aka no asieni na
the final battle.
Enti no na hyahye bremu na ye keka akoi.
That's right.
Enti wo hia se ye ho disua ma dodo no a ehwe Yesu animu no omo ho ba bia ye duru na afa ya na ma ombetu. Ti ye ka se Armageddon ko no na se the Battle of Armageddon no a aye okun a eda papa eni boni ntem na nipa kuo mienu na ekosa akoi.
Okay.
We are seeing mienu Armageddon, we are seeing mienu. Fine. Okuo ba ko ye edisem etredum mienu. Chechemu dunson.
Okay.
Edisem hwa etredum nan chechemu dumienu. Na hwa biom etredum nkron chechemu du.
Emu ba ko se ha na hotefo bo aseto
Sara pepe.
Wona okita onyankopon mransem ani Yesu Kristo adanse
Sa ehye sa ni pa kuyi nso na ye ne anuanom ne wiase nyina akasai no omonti ase ese sa kuyi sa na sa ahensudi a ya aboboso yi asore ba ko pa na sese aka o wiase a yetimi di wo mu ehye sa ahensudi mu ma efata wonum.
Okay.
Wo di Jesus Christ ko mo nye yi o de Pentecost ko nye yi o de Methodist Rome nye yi asore ba ko pe na wo de sa ahensudi yi awura mu a eni efata enene
odi onyankopon mransem so.
Yes.
No odi Yesu Kristo odi
sa no mukuta edi ye nkomhye ayezi asafo omontie mi yi enti de bia no kamia se be busumi anansi nsia banya de bia ye ba yetimi boso se omfo mo ne nkyere de aso dem.
That's right.
Yen kan se okobo so ne se ukọ heaven ba no Bible nkyerɛkyerɛ eni enyinaso a ekuta asɔre a ezi ne kuta de obabu nyinara eno nipa nkyerɛkyerɛ emfrem ti wotimi de so a sɛ nyankopɔn ehwɛ firi ɛhɔ no ɛbɛyɛ den so ɔbɛyira sa wotimi di nkyerɛkyerɛ no a ezi asɔre ɛkyerɛ no so de a ɛbɛyɛ den so ɔbɛyira
enye wa hoɔden na de bedi so.
Yes.
Nyankopɔn na be man ho nkronko tumi no ama wo de so. That's right.
Ha ɛbɛyɛ den so ɔbɛyira sa na de ne tenti na me tofo sɛ meminde bay enekwesi meminde bay o de ane se wahye watade kama okwa wafa
cheap and bi e de shepherd
bag sa okwa o se wotie edi yemre na evangelist se yemra na yemebo asu entine wasem yetia wa baba bo asu ntudru wa se sofo wo yi mama ne ni se sofo ni ho a bisa se asopa ni wo yi na fa mama ne tudwa omonim ne omeyo.
Okay.
Edamo aso mo hye ne nso mai.
That's right.
Afenso so mesre we medin se meka we na etwa se meka because my madwen sensem bi o hwa nyande bia na me ba meka sa asem nenso so no afrefo no binum afrese ya yes ka tron so mo kwazi asori ai ebi yakobo so no so mo kwa nsem ya mo tini TV so mo de kire kwazi asori dem no o mo wura hwa nya bi na ya mo tie.
Okay.
Be maka tron se o mo nya botentra hwa munya botentra hwa
because no wada ka no hwiri sipe
waira
sa
o de nya botentra mu na de o hu o TV so no o de koye no o kwa boys fo amane se bibi ko so o TV so nti o mo so nhwe ha ebi o ho a ne ye kan be ka kra ma abro so.
That's right.
Ebi so ho de onya hu se bibi kra asi ya mene ma sori ba mienu miensa bi ka se bi kra ba ko akra ha nkran obi a ono hwe program ko boys no ko ka kira so for ne mpanifo se o program yi na mama ba boys nti mun ko hwe ansa na sampanifo ne ni ba so bibi se ko sadete.
That's right.
Nti no ye ko boys wo from dem pacho abotre.
That's right.
De be se bia no pacho transafo no na obedu bo sha sase so.
Amen.
Na min shira. Good. Nti no maka no awie deɛ di soɔ ne sɛ woyi ekue yi a Bible kyerɛ mu sɛ ɔmo de Onyankopɔn mmara nsɛm do so ɔmo kita Yesu Kristo adanseɛ ɛne ne gyidie na ɔmo kura edi yɛ nkɔmhyɛ honhom na Onyankopɔn de akyɛ ɔmo so ɔmo de kyerɛkyerɛ nkɔmhyɛ mu no woyi saa kuyi firi hɔ a ekue ɔtɔ so mmienu no Bible kyerɛ sɛ ɔmo ama ho kwan ɛma ɔmo nsam ɛdada wɔ no.
That's right.
So ɛna wɔ di sɛ wete du nsia kyekyɛmu du mmiɛnsa ne du nan.
Okay.
Wɔn no ɔmo ama ho kwan ɛma ɔmo nsam adada wɔ no.
Mfimfini gyina bia ni hɔ.
Daabi. Ɛnti na woduru hɔ a wɔsi ɔho ahomɔne mmiɛnsa gye sɛ mpɔnkyerɛni a efiri
aboa no
ɛyɛ ɔtweaseɛ no nom
aboa no nom saa atorɔ adiifo anim
saa
na ɔyɛ ahonhom a opie kɔbɔbɔ asase so ahemfo ano
saa
ɛma Awurade Nyankopɔn ade nyinaa so tumfoɔ da kɛseɛ no
ɛno no saa da kɛseɛ ne na Armageddon yɛ a yɛka yi ɛnti no ahomfin mmiɛnsa ɛna twerɛsɛm se ɛbɛdi him asase so wie birim na ɛno na ɛboaboa dɔmmɔ no sɛdeɛ wakyerɛ mu awie no enti no wɔn a ɔmo ni Nyankopɔn mmara nsɛm do so anya Yesu Kristo mo gyidie ne nadanseɛ no wonka saa kɔ no ho a woka de ɔmo nsɛm awia mo yi ɔdada ɔmo yi ɛkɔ yi.
Oh, okay.
If we ni emfa ne wasɔre na ogidi a wo mu ɛno de yɛmfa nkasa.
Okay.
Ɛkɔ mienu pɛ na Bible aka saa ne teɛ. Ti no yɛka sɛ Armageddon ko no a na kyɛ sɛ wiase mu akyɛ mienu ɔfa baako abɛde Kristo nkyɛn baako nso akɔdi ɔmo nsam nkyɛn afa
ɛna ɔmo bɛko atia
ɛna bɛko atia Nyankopɔn
ɛko ne wɔ Kristo nkyɛn
saa na yɛwɔ bra yɛde hyɛaseɛ sɛdeɛ ɛde so atwa mo yɛ Nyankopɔn bufuo no saa na wo nso teɛ ɔho ɛbɛba ya na ɛho poporo ahyɛaseɛ ba kakra sɛ bɛyɛ a yɛbɛhu deɛ ɛba Nyankopɔn ɔyɔdɔ ma ɛboro so fi sɛ no wabrɛ so di kan bɔ kɔkɔ.
That's right.
Ɔho kwan sɛ kɔma nsuo no ba prɛko pɛ so obi ntumi misa no hwee Sodom so ɔho kwan sɛ ɔmagya no tɔ a wokɔ bisa ne sɛ ɔnɔ bɔ na ɔyɛ bɔ no ahyew wei
woni obi ani case
dɛbi no obi ani case nso so ɔno a Bible sɛ ne yemi yɛ na dɔ yɛ dɔɔso ne bo kyɛre fu enti no ɔbɔ wɔn kɔkɔ sɛ deɛ me ba bɛyɛ nie saa enti no Armageddon ko no Bible kyerɛ yɛ ɛbere ko bɛba na ansa na ɛnhyɛ aseɛ no ɛho mframa ɛhyɛ aseɛ kakra ne ehu sɛ ampa deɛ Bible aka no ɛbɛba so.
That's right.
ɛno ɛwɔ adisɛm etire dunsia Revelation chapter 16 verse 12 baabi a watwerɛ sɛ na ɔbɔfo ɔtɔ so nsia no ehwie ne kuruwa no egu subɔnten ya Euphrates so
na deɛ ɔtɔ so nsia no ehwie ne kuruwa no egu subɔnten Euphrates kɛseɛ Euphrates mu na emu nso wee na wasiesie kwan ama ahemfo a ofiri awia epueyɛ no hwa
yɛ da Awurade ase wɔse bɔfo ɔtɔ so nsia no ɔno ehwie Nyankopɔn bufu kuruwa no ɔdego subɔnten kɛseɛ Euphrates
mu. That's right.
na awie sɛ awie no nkwan no de gyina hɔ a ɛnka asɛm foforɔ wɔse awie no ɛna bɔ kwan ɛma ahemfo efiri owiapee no ɛbae adanse nti Euphrates so sa awie o sɛ awie o yɛmfa video di camera ne yɛmfa hwɛ asɛm
production ɛna yɛwɔ videos mako 15 a ɛbɛyie nti mɛsɛ video 1 ɛnkwan ro ɛfama.
What comes to your mind when I mention West Asia? Conflict, regional rivalries maybe? Today we are focusing on another issue that is plaguing West Asia, and that's climate change. Millions in Syria and Iraq are facing water shortages as the region's longest river, the Euphrates, dries up. Israel and Jordan have been engaging in drought diplomacy over scarce water resources, while Kuwait is converting the world's largest tire dump into a city. The Euphrates has been the cradle of civilization in West Asia. The river has been the lifeline for millions in Iraq and Syria for thousands of years. But now it has sunk to a historic low, sparking the region's worst water crisis in years. Our next report tells you more.
The mighty Euphrates River used to near Khaled al-Hamis's farm. But now the river is only visible from a distance. The crops have been destroyed due to the lack of irrigation. Even worse, the farmer's family has been left without drinking water.
أشجارنا يبست بساتيننا يبست.
We are completely deprived of drinking water. The women have to walk 7 kilometers just to get a bucket of water for their children to drink. Al-Hamis is among millions of Syrians who depend on West Asia's longest river, Euphrates. Water levels in the river have hit record lows. Neighboring Iraq has also been affected. Both Iraq and Syria have been dry countries. Despite this, the current drought is unprecedented. Rainfall has declined by 70%. Environmentalists are calling it the region's worst water crisis in years.
12 million people in Syria and Iraq are struggling with this, the worst water crisis in years that we have seen. So especially this is, the water table is at its lowest, 70% less rainfall, and this has really wide ramifications for health. It has wide ramifications because drinking water isn't safe.
The issue is not limited to drinking water shortage. Critical facilities like hospitals are at risk of facing power outages. This as the drought is threatening to bring hydroelectric power plants to a
Hadofum yasan emmo kwaba piu we die adanse ntin yekum so nkrunsu ayehu ahwe yenko evangelist.
Yes. Bible chire mo se obufo ne ebeba yehwie nyankopon bufo no ebeka esobonten kase ya Euphrates no ebeka no ne ka no ebewe yahwe video no.
That's right.
The okasa hono chire mo se ensuo no awe ampa na mashase nesu nyankopon ya adom a ena sansu ebeka ho asem kase pa.
That's right.
Na we de ye de
entertain
very good and dentin ensuo na awe Adwum wo ha ne so was trained to Psalm 107.
Okay.
33-34.
Okay, yenti de radio asem ese.
Yes.
Enwum oha ene enson ni nchichemo ye aduasam yensa. Ose odane esutene ema no ye anwea pradada. Ene ensuo ani wama no ye enchekere. Asase a emaduane edane asase kese.
Good.
Wona woteso no bon yenti.
Mo so womo teso no womo boni yenti woma ensuo ni adwe enti anwumre yi edi yemre Bible say yeso ne ha no memmi tina nyankopon asem so ka kire wiase nyinara se so bontin Euphrates na awie no a omobo ho dewuro no ye wiase boni.
That's right.
Na ama na awie
eme wa ma meme ware meme.
Yes.
Afi nyankopon ransem du no yemfanya
ho na asem no wo no so mo di nyankopon ransem du no so a so mo di so a ka ye makwa mem obanko ware ba so on say that it enti boni nyina koye emrato na musio kese no me de bo asori omo kire mo se mrani ho no titiru wo fere wo say kanya pam no sampumso ne ho a na ka to nyankopon ransem du mpumso ne ho
any Church of Christ
na kakra ye bo wa.
That's right.
Na me mama se me tintia nwumre eba asa no yenya kuo bi asase so ye kan so United Nations eye amanaman nyinara enkabomu kuo. Yes. Wo mo na chesi no omo di wiase anim na omo di ewura ohaw kese a Bible ahye nkom se beba wi ebrem omo a me kan sa na me pa che so omo di wiase anim apo nyankopon emra apo nyankopon ankasa UN ena me be ka se free me ma document we na wanya bre ahwema maye.
Okay.
UN for a document in way regulations adopted on the reports of the feed committee. Emma UN enyuma hodo wo no krabata de won obia de woye.
Okay.
Ene de you be sikonya so a nsam a woka ye behwe
okay, that's annex
2. Yes, check hono
okay. Provisional staff regulations, duties and obligations of the Secretariat.
Very good.
Okay, Regulation 1. The Secretary General and all members of the staff of the organizations are international civil servants, and their responsibilities are not national, but exclusively international. By a certain appointment, they pledge themselves to discharge their functions and to regulate their conduct with the interest of the United Nations only in view. In the performance of their duties, they shall not seek or receive instructions from any government or from any other authority external to the United Nations organization. All members of the staff are subject to the authority of the Secretary General, and are responsible to him in the exercise of their functions.
So, entino you and baby I say, and I watch them say, "Aye, amanamai kuwa amanamai yaka umabumu wamukuni."
That's right.
And I watch them say, "Sesa kuno, obadomwa, a moduma yafono." Yenya you so be adwuma wo yona na chese wo no woni kro bia afiri so biem ye ka wiase nyina bomu a emu na ofiri.
That's right.
Tino se me kra na yimi a me nka se me ye Ghana ni biem se me kwa adwuma ma yo nkwa de a me nka se me ye Ghana ni me ye yu ani
inti Ghana yi wa obesua wo Ghana mo waya de e ko duru ho obesua foforo akesa wonya Ghana ni sisi wiase ni.
Yes. Na ba bia me ka se ho ehun ne se brofo na wo kan no o kire mo se dwumadi a me bedie me swan se menyi tumi biara an me fa me ho ja tumi biara se a emfiri ekuo yi mu sanso na me mfa me ho ko hye nkyerɛkyerɛ foforo bi ana se me nko pɛ akwankyerɛ bi emfiri tumi biara enka ekuo yi ho se wo swan sa de no.
That's right.
Na me bi sa you and say mo na mo aka wiase abom wiase ne ba ko pɛ ne ye wo na mo aka nyina abom ejima ka nyina bomu a ana mo san swan se tumi bi firi ba bi ba me mfa me hu nhye
because mo na mo ahie
yi
mo na e be firi chira
ba omodo nyankopon na saa asem no mo aka no se de mo atwe nyankopon so tru so oba ye ntie no
tie pim nyankopon akutia
sa
sem fa bibia wasem bia mfa ba abro ma
sa na tie
mo adwuma ne ye wa
se memre na se mo mo a nyankopon bo Adam ni Eve na wo mienu no aya adwen kro se efiri nneko se nyankopon ba ye ntie na asem.
Wow.
Jese yenya na betia de omo de ye ka cho nyankopon ni
blasphemy
so ajase entine Bible kire se ye no sa krowi omo na bedi wiase anim e de wura okon atwato wo ye ebrim eye yuenfo.
Okay.
Na metwa ho ni tia na masa komanim kakra efi se omo aswan se nya de a omo de omo hye nyankopon se nyankopon asamase ne ne kire.
Okay.
Good. Yuenkro yara ye bebo the yaka se here no ye bebo ho video.
Okay.
Mienu ne mienu.
My main production says some more crowd videos 2 and 3. Madaro mamuro eno so my ninsi de yaka esudua.
After the extensive consultations I've had with the membership, it is my understanding that the General Assembly wishes to proceed with the adoption of the draft resolution by acclamation. May I take it that this is the wish of the General Assembly to adopt by acclamation draft resolution A/71/L4. It is so decided. Your Excellency, by resolution 71/4 of 13th October 2016, the General Assembly has appointed you Secretary General of the United Nations for a term of office beginning 1st January 2017 and ending on 31st December 2021. I will now ask Mr. Guterres to take the oath of office and to repeat after me. Raise your right hand. I, Antonio Guterres, solemnly swear to exercise in all loyalty, discretion and conscience, the functions entrusted to me as Secretary General of the United Nations, to discharge these functions and regulate my conduct with the interests of the United Nations only in view, and not to seek or accept instructions in regard to the performance of my duties from any government or other authority external to the organization. Congratulations.
Adofnom ye sign emamo kwa babio. Evangelist na say a chapel bi usai wo Ghana hanom so ukusia na wo UN. Uduru na yema ni so ayi we yi.
Omeso we.
Nti say no enya Ghana bio.
Da bi. Enti UN ye kwa bi o mo kire mo say. Wo ba don sa kwa no a. Ye nyin kire bi. Ye mfa ye hu hye tumi bi ase bio. Age de wo UN no am. Enti ye gina ha kasa na say ye wo studio ha kasa. Spontaneous Euphrates na awie no. Eye boni a wiase aye na sa boni no eye de Bible aka ebre bi ka asem bi na message so bi e wo de wiase betimi afra ne boni yemfa ho na mum age de Nyankopon fra ne boni no
e no na ye boni
e na ye boni omonti ase sa
that's right
ti nya ye ne be kire Nyankopon de ye boni Nyankopon se emraton ane boni na emraton so acha kire se ni mransem du no wo to a ye boni e na wiase ato ma ene nsu ahodo a eweba na de odi ne nsanse so se eno sha che se awi a ye ka hunu se ape ye wura ko kase ne Armageddon no eno Euphrates nsuo no
ena se nso awe
se so awe
aye de ho adanse a kire
sanity ena yiwe nkro yara o mo kire mu o de hwenkyire mo de nsuo na awe no hwe mu so meka no fra kire wa date we ye 13 August 2001 me shada me de ko firi ho 21 years ni what the first paragraph no able screen so
UN Environment Program release report on demise of Mesopotamian marshlands. Okay, 13th August 2021. Nairobi,
Stockholm.
Okay, 13th August, UNEP. Around 85% of the Mesopotamian marshland, the largest wetland in the Middle East, and one of the most outstanding freshwater ecosystems in the world, have been lost mainly as a result of drainage and damming. According to a report released today by Klaus Topfer, the United Nations Environment Program's Executive Director. Okay. 2. Comprising an integral part of the Tigris-Euphrates river system, the marshland are located at the confluence of the two rivers in southern Iraq and partially extended into Iraq. The study shows that these vast wetland, which once covered between 15,000 and 20,000 square kilometers, now cover less than 1,300 square kilometers.
Next, so omu chiremo se kaneno ensuo no babia etrefano almost about 15,000 kilometers to 20,000 kilometers. Brofo kwansini baye ope ayi dunum de kosi ope aduenu se no se awia ma
eswatia ba apemba kwa asa
sa de aka no fa he ono mo se eye amampo na aye dam ye de be light ene bi e de bi dofu
akoso mo ye dam so nwe
sa no mo se yuwani ye nwe wo de tuo mo asem bi e say we 2001
that's right
ape about 2021 mfie duro no echi yuwan ye yi bio ajazira no beka say wo de tuo wo mkasa.
Okay, all the trees have died. Iraq face intensifying water crisis.
Very good.
That's 5th November 2021.
After jump blast 7 million people.
7 million people are at risk because of a lack of water in Iraq.
Yes.
According to a recent report by aid group in the region, rising temperatures, low level of rainfall, and lack of access to river water are increasing the danger and severity of drought. Researchers warn.
So
that's the warning coming from the researchers. Climate change is one of the factors that has led to desertification and drought in Iraq, said Red Bull Nasar Dara, a lecturer in geology at Salahaddin University.
And UN per se and say, and so now we know, and yet damn na climate change, a human such right. One is sacred view. Omoko can done to 2021.
When
Yankopon is sacred view, sir. And a Bible say, or no, or ma ensure every, sir. Nina nipa bonya yinti. Na de ya kan o twere konkron wo hyenkom to ho wa mo yu andin wo kire se ahemfo bibin baba wiase a decent dunso omonya botana monka ho nyinara na suban a nkomhye ka se saa hemfo no ba wiase ombeye no na UN wo ye ne pepepe no
okay
enti yetimi di yensansi so say UN enne saa nkomhye no a ya twra to ho no every say Bible say eye emandu a esi aboa koko bi a
oba bi a ote aboa koko bi a o mendu
very good
any itrenson eso
oba no de agina ho masafo tie ono nya UN tie be ye nefiri aboa no so na aboa koko no oba ne te so no ono wo mandu saa mandu no aboa na ngase no momonsam ana mandu ne ya ahemfudu enti no omonsam be fa wiase na odisa Bible disa ahemfudu no ene gina ho wiase tumdi ahodo.
That's right.
UN ana abedi sa le no se ono na nkomhye no edi koma no ti se de ya hye Yesu ho nkom se oba ne fekuo no a oni ono ba ko be yina ma.
That's right.
Edin bi amawo yesi ba ko be yina ma den de be hu se Judas yini ma ye
ebre ni wie duru no.
Yes odi sa adwuma no ene hu se wo na sa nkomhye ne fa wo eno be ne ye kan Bible ambo UN din wo kire suban se ahimfo binum beba wiase akambom na dwuma mbedi eni
okay
na UN ye obi anye bidaji UN enti de ye kan no UN na ye kan ho asem se enkomhye aka fa wo.
That's right.
Omoni tumi a ebeka bom abebrem na meka se ka bom a omoni ahenie na ewo ho na enni ho na ababio.
That's right.
Eye aboa wo firi nsuo num Daniel 7 meka papasi maka holy see we UN any o meka bom.
Okay.
Ebio Revelation 13 ho na megina no yesi ye hu aboa bi a wote so gwama na owo mamienu okaze o twiase eno ya America. Yes Bible kiremu o se sa tumi no any Rome to me, any UN to me, be me say, a bacambum, no matter in Yankopa by a vibrim. And no, and echo son. And Tebra Euphrates na Ariano, UN, as they say, agent of Panajim, or no any Rome,
okay,
any America, na Yaba Basso, a 3 days to corner, Yabacos Alano.
That's right.
Then you made dear, me person Montias say, as one day Euphrates Nivia. Now Yankopo, Boyasin in Akoko, say a Bernasson, Yamema, Yanina ye.
Okay.
Na esa UN enyi babo ni enti se mo kopɛ yi nkyiremu firi baabi.
That's right.
Na no na ebma ya adwen ekɔ atwere so sɛ kane no King Pharoah osondaye wanya mu nkyiremu.
That's right.
Ɔkɔfa ne nyansafo nyinaa baaye anye yi ɛne ka kyerɛ sɛ wa brantie bi efrɛ no Joseph nyame nipa Joseph be kyiremu we Genesis 41 verse 8 egu screen no so.
Okay.
Ɛno nkoda yemra yenko Babylon Ohine Nebukadnezar breso so nyada ye so Daniel 2 wantiase okoyi nyansafo nyina baaye anye yie yekofra Daniel baaye nyame nipa koro yara ayemienu ehwa Daniel 5 Ohin Belshazzar ohun twere bi oba no ho okofra nyansafo nyina baaye eba sane pe omonka di kan kofra nyansafo ba omomba na sa anye yie afi yenkopa nyankopɔ ma ne kira kwai ni akopɛ Daniel no abekirim so ho enti no kane no ahemfo ananse ahenie ne dia asase so no no omo wo ekuo bi a yesusu se omo de omoniwa ne ya miensa omo ho ekirikira de
obaga na hakra na tetemre no ya ahemfo no no omo wo ohene kramu wono na bibia bekoso bia tese esunsum ade entiase nim ne entiase ye kofre ba no ma be kanche mo ma kire wo
no kire enti no de UN ne ye ne se esense omo apo nyankop se nyankopon asem na bibi ikoso a wo hwem wo de hu se wo we ni aye na esusu aso ni ti ye ka se de ekoso no eye nyankopon mra omo ato na esan se omo apo nyankopon ntinu omo ntimi nye ba bo ni ntum
okay
fi so omo akantam se ye nyi hwi ntum enti se omo amu hu no omo pa obi a ometimi a kire de ekoso na ase
ono de ombe gene di
and se o ka kwero
no ti say science fo no na aba be dan tetemre mu anyansafo a na ahemfo rely on them. Oh, okay.
Video eba na be production.
Production some more crowd videos 6 to 9. Mother remind us of moon room for my.
So Dr. Anthony Fauci pushing back on attacks made by his critics of his handling of the pandemic in a new interview with Kara Swisher on her New York Times Sway podcast.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, nature is angry. And we fool ourselves if we think we can fool nature, because nature always strikes back. and around the world, nature is striking back with fury. Consider the last few months. July, the hottest months ever. June through August, the hottest summer in the Northern Hemisphere ever, and the second hottest winter in the Southern Hemisphere ever. The years 2015 to 2019, the 5 hottest year on the books ever. Our warming Earth is issuing a chilling cry. Stop. If we don't urgently change our ways of life, you jeopardize life itself. Look around. Seas are rising and oceans are acidifying. Glaciers are melting and corals are bleaching. Droughts are spreading and wildfires are burning. Deserts are expanding and access to water is dwindling. Heat waves are scorching and natural disasters are multiplying. Storms everywhere are more intense, more frequent, more deadly. I've seen it with my own eyes, from Dominica to the Sahel to the South Pacific. In May, I went to the island nation of Tuvalu, where I witnessed an entire country fighting for its very existence against the rising seas. 2 months ago, I visited Mozambique, which was pummeled by unprecedented back-to-back cyclones. A few days ago, I was in the Bahamas, where Hurricane Dorian pounded the country for 2 unrelenting days. The destruction was not simply appalling, it was apocalyptic. Make no mistake, when we see those images, we are not just seeing damage, we are seeing the future if we do not act now. The climate emergency is a race we are losing, but it is a race we can win. The climate crisis is caused by us, and the solutions must come from us. We have the tools. Technology is on our side. Readily available technological substitutions already exist for more than 70% of today's emissions. And we have the roadmap, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement on climate change. And we have the imperative, undeniable, irrefutable science. The best science, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, tells us that any temperature rise about 1.5 degrees will lead to major and irreversible damage to the ecosystems that support us. But science also tells us it is not too late. We can do it. Limiting warming to 1.5 degrees is still possible. But it will require fundamental transformations in all aspects of society. How we grow food, use land, fuel our transport, and power our economies.
Adolfo na sama mo akwa babio. Even nam kasa Antonio Guterres ba be kasa de sisi ni nyina no. Nyankoponti ye wa rehyimu se bitimi asesa. Be we dey science.
Se ono kasa okoro man Catholic. Na be bi ogina no e so opo nyankopon. Ofiri wona okwa so ndam a ba ko di communion. Sa na de netie.
Okay.
Yes. Me sheda pa na ye boss abedu no. Fe se ono nkasa e kiremu de nsachaya hodo abawiase. De epo eye nipa. Owia se de sisi ade ekomo aba asase woso oja obobo ni nyina
ani sunsu aso e wo ma dachi
okani nyina eno kiremu se de aba nyina no eye climate change wi mu nsachiraye e na aye sa na me nyinara eno kiremu se ye wanu aduru mo na wonya edi eduro no omo a e kire nia ye benya do na afire no wo mo ni science fo no mo okay this IPCC Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change bro for something ni nyane say amanamai abanya hodo wo mu wo mo abode mo nyasa pefo okuo na say Ghana de ka ho oman bia de ka ho enti de esie no munhia na munkyira adwen enti omo di nkyiremu no ba na yo na dia to mo say de honhumfo ni
science for de abani
eno ano
de gina so
ene ye kyire mo say enye de science ka no omuntie de Bible kan say eye bone Nyankopon mra to na aye sade no
even me bo we dem am mbo below bed kakra sa holy see eka UN ho
yes
ena eja kronkron pop
ai
sa oji Nyankopon de oje Bible
sa no se
won kan kire om say nyankopon asama ya to se mewa ma mewa ma ne ato nyamemra nsem du na ho medaka ho bi no en na akofo ho ya ba ade no honka
ono nkasa wato na ntuo se de ACC no oni abode mo nyasapefo e koto agina na okoji nchirimo efiri ho e de wura sunsun wiase de ya brain ya oti asase so eno ye beka na su ye ba no ye kutakata we de seme de ma no na aka na ye ba na suika ye de ono an krata wa twere no ye ba be kira manfo se ye kan Roman panifo tie yi Roman Catholic panifo mu tie yi enti medika aka se me boa mo nhye mo tibi no so na se ne na document we ma dance yemra video se de chiri mra bi
okay I am some young from so kakra first videos na it say ye ko videos 6 to 9 into production moneyo yeah.
The people who...
So Dr. Anthony Fauci pushing back on attacks made by his critics of his handling of the pandemic in a new interview with Kara Swisher on her New York Times Sway podcast.
The people who are giving the ad hominems are saying, Fauci misled us. First he said no masks, then he said mask. Well, let me give you a flash. That's the way science works. You work with the data you have at the time. It is essential as a scientist that you evolve your opinion and your recommendations based on the data as it evolves. That is the nature of science. It is a self-correcting process. And that's the reason why I say people who then criticize me about that are actually criticizing science. It was not a change because they felt like flip-flopping. It was a change because the evidence changed, the data.
Well, I'm delighted you're all here. I'm in a group of labor and business leaders who...
Thank you. Possibly changing the mask mandate for vaccinated Americans. Thank you, guys. Let's go. Thank you.
I'll respond to the COVID question quickly. We follow the science. What's happening now is all the major scientific operations in this country and the 25-person group we put together.
Right. It's very dangerous, Chuck, because a lot of what you're seeing as attacks on me, quite frankly, are attacks on science. Because all of the things that I have spoken about consistently from the very beginning have been fundamentally based on science. Sometimes those things were inconvenient truths for people, and there was pushback against me. So if you are trying to, get at me as a public health official and a scientist, you're really attacking not only Dr. Anthony Fauci, you're attacking science. And anybody that looks at what's going on clearly sees that. You have to be asleep not to see that. That is what's going on. Science and the truth are being attacked.
97%. That's a very specific number, isn't it? What you need to know is that the number isn't 50. It isn't 60. It isn't 70, 80, or even 90. 97, or somewhere up there. Here's the deal. It's a very specific point in time and a very specific number. But there have been a number of surveys, more than one, that got to that exact same percentage. The latest came from Australia. John Cook. In 2013, he came up with a research project to look at all the scientific papers out there that had abstracts that said something about global warming. He came up with almost 12,000. Well, of those 12,000, almost 66%, 2/3, mentioned nothing about the cause of global warming, just what was happening. Well, of the 1/3 that did mention the cause, 97% said it was most likely man making that difference. Another survey about 5 years before that one put a survey out over the internet to...
Adofno sign MMO kwaba bi sa fe no adwen program na they discuss ne Armageddon okonkese a wona bon sambe dada won beka won ho abon akogufa no ni nyankopon ma edi nyankopon mransem so mransem du ni nyina homeda ne ka ho bi no gi Yesu die e de betentam so no na egu so a yere evangelist.
Yes, one will say Bible na gota yen de Nyankopon we hu ye mobo ana o ma ya ate ase se aka akrama Kristo be ba be fa ya kwa ewiem be sachura epo betra ne hie asase wo so ahodo esan ya de nyama bibiri beba.
That's right.
Na de beba ebe kan wiase ebom no mo sere tia no Nyankopon ene yen a ye di na kire no eye se esobonten Euphrates no bawie
mo
so ahwe omonti ma sesa anya no nko anya asem no ye wo okon no kosem ekom ne no ma bibiri se de babo aka no eno e kra yen se Kristo wo ba na bofo no e so ni ma na ano enti egu ahosisi so na de be kan wiase nyina bomu na yen gidi fo ne hu se de wiase duro no ohun be sore tia Kristo ba bia kan yen a eno ye se esobonti Euphrates no ebewe na eno ahya ase awie no ena UN for de ambassador science for say enye Nyankopon bi mu science for say nipa nsa no adwuma ena ma nsuo no awie eni wiem sasra aba no ti bi de twato no omo se 97% chese abode manya sapefo wo wiase no emo nchemu wo ha ne omo nchemu wo ha obenya aduoson so chese miensa pe na enka bi so na wote o mampani Obama wo se yendi chance na chi dio odiso Anthony Fauci o kan sem bi o se science na a corrective process just ene o kan na say correct o china no science na beti me aka say no de me kan ne enye ene de ma ko wi mu fufura ba
because omo di data na ye adwuma
omo di yes omo di data na ye adwuma wo na de ye kan no ye mfa video de chiri no miensa de enka on ye panchira asem mu yi do meti ase
okay production videos 10 to 12
yes
madam Mamuro and so my.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Mr. President, Secretary General, Your Excellencies, Ghana presents her compliments to you, Mr. President, worthy representative of our great neighbor, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and extends hearty congratulations on your election to preside over this 74th General Assembly. Mr. President, the General Assembly of the United Nations is usually held at the time of year when the extremes of nature are on display around the world. Maybe we are being urged to take notice and hopefully take practical and proactive steps to curb the human activities that are endangering our planet. Our world is enriched by the diversity of cultures and religions and beliefs. They add spice to our lives. But there are scientific and mathematical truths that do not change with space or time, and these truths we all do well to uphold. Now that the scientists have spoken on the realities of climate change, I believe it is time to direct our energies to what we can and should do to counteract the danger and stop unnecessary arguments.
On with it. Let the science speak. It is only science that is going to get us out of this hole.
I think we should follow science on this.
We follow the science.
Follow the science.
We will be advised on and guided by the science.
Listen to the science.
Following science and scientific data.
Continue to be followed by the evidence and the science.
We are guided by the science.
I trust the scientists.
Science has given us a solution.
All of the things that I have spoken about consistently from the very beginning have been fundamentally based on science.
The science is evolving, the science is moving, and we are following the science each and every day.
When the science changes, we must change.
I don't know your sign, follow the science. Evangelist,
yes. Entino, Caneno, I am for no so Diana, so Montasia. Yakope huhu for na so mbechirim ene asantu yasia yakofa science for no so mbechirim ti de science be ka no eno a efiri Ghana ha ye mampani His Excellency na don ka Kufuado you and no wakasa no wakan say science for no kasa e mu hia kasa bi e mu hia bi omo adi akire ba nyina follow the science yendi science na yendi science na yendi science na chi enti we ase no we are guided by the science Anthony Fauci doctor
and not by the Bible
sir tina ye akire mo say so bonti Euphrates na we no amodi di science akire no omo ni akire yen ya gidi for the katem say mun ni Bible na chi no benya nkwa tina ye ka say mun raise your pass on them aso ka nyina ko di science achi omo gitum se de me kan anya no kra no omo de no omo fa madanse mra se omo ni science achi no ko yen yesi wotu nyankopɔ mra na yenum ba omo meka kire se wotu nyankopɔ mra nyanhira omo fa madanse mra yen fa video mi na de akire so nka ho.
Okay, yeah, last two videos 13 and 14 production Odaroma in Roma.
Now to a dire warning about climate change. According to a new report, experts say that we have until 2030 to avoid catastrophe. It also says if unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet. The report focuses on what could happen if global temperatures rise by more than 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. It would likely mean more erratic weather, dangerous heat waves, rising sea levels, and dying coral reefs. CNN meteorologist Ivan Cabrera is in the International Weather Center following this story. And Ivan, what more can you tell us about this very dire warning?
Yes, so 2030. I mean, we're talking about 12 years at this point here, getting very close. And of course, all the while, I mean, we've already seen climate change take its toll on the planet. So yes, another climate report and more bad news. This one, of course, from the Intergovernmental.
It is unequivocal that human activities are responsible for climate change. That's the finding of a new study by the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It's the most up-to-date assessment of how global warming will change the world in the coming decades. Environmental experts have called it a massive wake-up call to governments to cut emissions. 234 authors from 66 countries have worked on the landmark assessment. The report says global average temperature rise could reach or exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius in the next 20 years. Now, that is 10 years sooner than expected. That temperature rise will breach the ambition of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement and bring widespread devastation and unprecedented extreme weather. This all comes less than 3 months before the COP26 climate conference in Glasgow in Scotland. Vital UN talks that will determine the future course of efforts to tackle climate change. And the UK minister responsible for delivering COP26 has released this statement following the publication of today's report. He says, "Our message to every country, government, business and part of society is simple. The next decade is decisive. Follow the science and embrace your responsibility to keep the goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius alive."
Yes. One say Christo Yesu or catch ray the dada. Says a ye no more. Or say you one, yes, yet to you one. Yempa Yenimpiaso, ye jabe, a gian abenes oba. So say, and Yansa for you and Yansa for no. Almost the air cost one. Ye war, they could see 2030. Any video by. Yes, I can't feel what you almost almost say I can't feel what you say. I shall be ampan never be a wuna quemwa. 2030 air corner as it by a damn viasi.
That's right.
And the video platform, Papa no Casa Lokshama. Was say on not 70 or the movie say follow the science. Yenny science in it. The science no more day ban. A home rebi a pia babontain, ne no ni amagadon kono ashasie. For say Mano or Moody from Ebano, the or however to your member so.
Any dinanko pombran sem, Dunina, Medaka.
No.
Now what Jesus Christ would deal, or how be become so by Shemra 8 years after. Ti a brani peya, amagadon kono ashasia. For say a chassa yesu or bemubi. One ma, oh, I send a man soon we was on a man we are not feeling over so. Oh, Sabda know what you want to be. Eh, Sana Denity. So the evangelist, I mean, a poor number so Casacha and evangelist, the researcher Joseph Anani. Ye videos no, Oko evangelist Joseph Anani, YouTuber, who bring your videos Nina El Hop, Nawashi. Yamisha so share. That's it.